Welcome to Volleyball State, your look at volleyball in 6 rotations. Here are your hosts, Jeff Sheldon and Lincoln Arneal.
Hello and welcome to Volleyball State, a look at the sport of volleyball in 6 rotations and a proud part of the Hurrdat Sports family. I'm Jeff Sheldon.
And I'm Lincoln Arneal.
That's your cue. It was a week of top 5 tests for Nebraska, and the Huskers passed both with flying colors. We're going to talk all about the week that Nebraska rediscovered its mojo with big wins over Stanford and Louisville. Plus, teams around the country are jockeying for position in the final week before conference play starts. You know who else had a really good week? The Creighton Blue Jays. We're going to talk about Creighton also picking up a pair of top 10 wins. We'll also set up the first week of Big Ten play coming up this week by looking at the best early wins of each of the conference's top teams. Plus, we had a great conversation with Ben Boldt, the head coach of the NAIA Concordia Bulldogs, who are also having a great start to the season themselves. But first, Lincoln, get our plugs in. Tell the people what they need to know to find us outside of this podcast.
Hey, we are a content machine. We put out all sorts of live tweets, articles for you to read, videos for you to watch. So follow us on at Volleyball Pod. We also put out videos on TikTok. You can follow me at Lincoln_VB on Twitter and read all of my articles on Huskers Illustrated. Sign up for Volleyball State Substack. You can get kind of the week that was. And again, watch our videos on YouTube. You can watch the podcast on YouTube. You can watch a little game recaps on YouTube as well, too.
So for full disclosure for the listeners, we are taping this on Sunday afternoon after Nebraska's big win against Louisville. Lincoln is down in Louisville right now. That's where he's taping his half of the show from. How many pieces have you written since the match ended?
Just one. I wrote my article, but I also did my 3 thoughts that we posted on YouTube. So I've done 2 pieces, right, really, and then put out some.
You've recorded a video. You've worked on your volleyball magazine, like Power Poll. I forget what you all call that, but worked on your poll stuff. Like no rest for you from the second and I've also in the Bluegrass State.
Yeah, we the first volleyball mag Super 16 poll comes out tomorrow, so I was working on that before we started recording. So I'm the only person left in the Louisville. I might be the only person left in the KFC Yum Center. So we'll see if they're still cleaning up the Terraflex court out there.
In the events crew. Well, hey, take us through, Lincoln, the 6 rotations we're going to talk about today in episode 38.
Yes, it's a straightforward show. Rotation 1, we're talking about Nebraska's sweep over Stanford. Rotation 2, another sweep, another top 5 team. This one is over Louisville. We'll go around the country in rotation 3. Rotation 4, we will talk to our good friend Ben Boldt about what's going on in Concordia Bulldogs. They're another top 5 team. Then we'll check in on the rest of the Big Ten. Action starts this week. There are 7 Big Ten teams that are ranked. We'll check out what is their best win of each team, and then we will look ahead to the start of Big Ten play. As weird as this sounds, Nebraska will open up conference play with UCLA and Southern Cal.
It's always good to open up your conference play with a traditional conference rival.
Oh, definitely.
And Nebraska gets to play USC and UCLA. I thought this was great, not only great programming, but some nice tongue-in-cheek programming from the Big Ten Network. Was after Nebraska's win over Stanford the other night. They put on, I think it was the 2010 or 2012, I forget, Nebraska-UCLA match in the Coliseum. Yeah. I actually was at that match. It was one of the first years that I covered the program for the World Herald, and I remembered that 5-set win, and it brought back a lot of memories. But man, the sport, the game, just looked different 12 years ago from what it looks like now. The speed, the power, everything. But that was one of the last big Nebraska-UCLA matches I remember, and we're going to get to that.
Yeah, it's really mimic the evolution from 4K from HD to 4K now. It's kind of the sports made that same jump too.
Absolutely. But hey, we're first of all on, was it Tuesday or Wednesday? I can't believe I can't remember.
Wednesday night, non-Tuesday.
Wednesday night, Nebraska takes down USC and UCLA's former conference rival, the number 2 ranked Stanford Cardinal. Nebraska sweeps Stanford 25-17, 25-22, 25-14 as we move into rotation 1. Lincoln, I guess the first thing I thought of when I watched this match was this was a level of dominance I don't think I really expected Nebraska to put together, but they just came out on fire. They were only threatened, I would say, in really one part of the match. And in games 1 and game 3, like this was over in the first 5 minutes of the set. And so this was a comfortable, breezy win for Nebraska over the number 2 ranked team in the country.
Yeah, this was kind of the continuation that you saw Nebraska build up. It was the first part of that Nebraska Creighton match. You saw this level of performance, and then things trailed off. They got it back, but then you saw the same thing against Arizona State, and you thought Nebraska was play at this level, but not against this level of opponent. And that was just what I don't know if I was surprised by, but like you always wonder what team's going to show up for a big match like this. And Nebraska really put its best foot forward. And it really kind of started off. I mean, they were up, was it 5-1? They won 5 of the first 6, and Stanford called timeout when it was 8-2. And the Devaney Center was rocking. It was loud. People know the magnitude of this type of match, and they really came and helped support Nebraska and boosted them up.
Absolutely. Just real quick on the top line numbers, Andy Jackson led Nebraska with 9 kills and no errors on 15 swings. We're going to put her week together a little bit after we finish talking about Nebraska Louisville, but I can tell you this, Andy Jackson did not commit an attack error this week in wins against 2 top 5 teams. Andy Jackson played error-free volleyball. She also had 5 blocks against Stanford. Lindsey Krause had a nice match with 9 kills, and Merritt Beeson had 8 kills and hit over 300. But really, Lincoln, Nebraska didn't play lights out offensively, I feel like, in either of the matches this week, even though they hit, north of 300 against Louisville on Sunday. But where Nebraska really did impress me was from the service line. And this match against Stanford on Wednesday night was probably Nebraska's best serving match of the year. 5 aces in 3 sets isn't really going to blow anyone away, but they only had 4 serving errors. And as I keep harping on people who point out aces and errors to me, that's a kind of a shallow way to look at evaluating serving. Stanford was out of system much of the night, and they sent Cami Minor, their excellent setter, like running a 5K just to track down some of these sets, and Nebraska's block really feasted on that.
Yeah, and I think, there's a lot of things that go at hitting percentage, but they hit 100, and I think that is a lot of, some blocks, digging, yes, those play into it, but again, it goes back to what you were saying about Nebraska's put Stanford out of system and really made them uncomfortable, I thought, too. And you look at one thing you could tell how much they're in system versus out of system is how much they're depending on their outside hitters. If they're super outside hitter dependent, that means that more than likely they're out of system more so. The 2 outside hitters, Elia Rubin and Ipar Kurt, had 32, 31, and their right side had 17 swings. So it's very outside, which is, again, another indicator that Nebraska, and that starts with Nebraska serving.
Absolutely. So a great serving, this has been, I feel like, a weakness of Nebraska's in the first couple weeks of the season, where they were just trying to keep the ball in and they were lollipopping it over, starting some easy transition chances, letting opposing teams run their offense. You saw them get outserved in that SMU match. This was a real 180 of that against Stanford. When you hold Stanford to just 100, when Stanford came in, I want to say they were at like 315 as a team coming into that.
4th in the nation.
4th in the country. They got some great weapons, although you wouldn't know it by how Elia Rubin has played the last 2 years against Nebraska. Not quite as bad on Wednesday night as she was last year in Palo Alto, but still, when you make Stanford dependent on one player, they get really predictable, and they just don't have the players to overpower you when you're all that predictable. So in the last 2 years against Nebraska, Elia Rubin, who's Stanford's leading attacker this year, their junior outside hitter, 17 kills, but 19 errors, hit negative against the Huskers the last couple years. And Nebraska really just kind of put it on them from the get-go in the start on Wednesday night in Lincoln.
Yeah. And it was Nebraska's serving started that too, but we talked last week about the other big indicator of what was going to be kind of which way the match was going to go. It was what Nebraska was doing against Stanford's block. And I thought that Nebraska really, we talked about the numbers and the hitters, and they only hit 263, but because Stanford has a great floor defense, but Nebraska made Stanford's block a non-factor. I don't think they didn't have a block until the 3rd set, I believe.
Stanford's block, you could tell just watching it, wasn't very strong. And Stanford was averaging under 2 blocks a set coming into the match. And we pointed this out on last week's show. there were some shots that Nebraska hit on Wednesday night that just went. I thought the block was soft. Like they went right through Stanford's hands and down to the floor against a stronger blocking team like a Wisconsin or maybe a Penn State. I don't know that Nebraska gets away with some of those shots. And the hitting percentage that Nebraska finished at, what did you say? Was it 260 something?
263, yeah.
263, which is, somewhat pedestrian. It's respectable, but that is a little bit misleading because they hit over 400 in both games 1 and game 3. Yeah, they had a terrible offensive night in game 2, and we can get to the game by game here in a second, but it's really misleading because Nebraska hit 400 or better in 2 of the 3 sets against Stanford, and then still won game 2 despite hitting 093. So it's really kind of a story about how the numbers don't always tell the whole story.
Yeah, 8 of their 13 hitting errors came in that second set. And you mentioned kind of the one time that Stanford really threatened was in that second set. Do you want to go over the first set? Let's go over the first set first.
Yeah.
There's not much.
Shouldn't take very long. It was over fast.
Yeah, it was like we said, Nebraska jumped out 5-1.
9-2.
9-2 after
5-1. Yeah. And then, Stanford was never basically, if you're down by 7 points that early in a rally scoring set, it's kind of over. Nebraska hit 401 in game 6. Lindsey Krause had a really hot start. She had 4 kills in game 1. I think Lindsey Krause, this is a nice team in Stanford to play against. It fits her style because she was able to power some balls right through the block, and she tooled well as well, I think too. But you like seeing a nice start from Lindsey Krause and get her going early. But Nebraska just kind of rolled in game 1.
Yeah, and it looked like the second set was going to be more of the same. Nebraska jumped out to a 7-2, 8-2 lead, and then you thought Stanford called the timeout. Like, oh no, it's going to be a repeat of the second, and then just things switched just randomly too, and then Stanford run off 8 points in a row too, and that was kind of the one stretch that Nebraska looked completely lost too. They got Stanford's only 2 aces came during that by Rubin had both of those. Nebraska calls timeout. They come out of it, add 2 more kills, and then 2 Nebraska hitting errors, and all of a sudden it's an 8-0 run, and Nebraska's down 10-8, and you wonder, this is going to be a slugfest the whole night.
Well, that was where Elia Rubin really made herself felt in the match, as she was at the service line for that 8-0 run by Stanford. And Stanford is a high risk, high reward serving team. I watched them again on Saturday night against Kentucky, and they're trying to serve tough, but they serve out a lot. But they got Nebraska a couple times in aces on that 8-0 run. They led. That made it 10-8 Stanford. Stanford actually led 17-14, but what killed their momentum there was another service error that brought Nebraska back within 2, and that started a 6-1 Nebraska run that let Nebraska pull away in 2.
And the highlight of that was Stanford missed 3 serves in a row, where after it was 17-14, like you said, they missed their next 3 serves. So it's really hard to build on your lead if you miss your 3 serves in a row. But the other part of that run that really ignited Nebraska comeback was Andy Jackson. Andy Jackson is a freak athlete, and it takes the right passing to get her involved. And Nebraska ran back-to-back slides that put them ahead 19-18, and that just kind of, again, ignited the crowd, got Nebraska settled down and realized, okay, we've taken Stanford's best shot, let's power through. And they came through again. They had a couple big blocks. Jackson and Harper Murray had a block in that run, and then the other key moment I thought was it was 22-20 later on. Rebecca Alec had a solo stuff on a quick attack.
One of the few times that Stanford tried to set the middle, if my memory serves me, and Rebecca Alec was just right there and sent it back, and it was 23-20 Nebraska, and that kind of ended, for all intents and purposes, game 2. Real quick on Andy Jackson, what I was really impressed by her, not just her numbers on Wednesday night, but the different kind of shots she is hitting, and you saw this against Louisville too, is no longer is she just trying to crush a slide cross court, and she got blocked a couple times against SMU like that. You are now seeing her try to tool blockers. She's hitting line. She's trying to go to the deep corner on the slide, and that's kind of, I feel like, the last evolution of a middle blocker hitting that slide. Is it's not enough to just go up and crush one cross court. You have to realize what's the best shot for that situation. And she's really impressive. As we said, 0 hitting errors in 2 matches this week.
Yeah, and
so Nebraska only hits 093 against Stanford in game 2, but helped out by 5 Stanford service errors in the set. Nebraska takes a 2-0 lead, and then they come back after intermission, and Nebraska pretty much ends it quickly. Huskers led 13-6 in game 3 after a 4-0 run that Rebecca Alec had 2 more blocks in. Then they turned that into a 7-1 run after Stanford sided out, and it was 16-7. And again, a 9-point lead midway through a rally scoring set is pretty much over. So Stanford hit just 0-62 in game 3. They had 9 errors. The errors really started to pile up for the Cardinal, and again, they finished at what they hit for a match, just 100. So Nebraska, hits better than 150 points, better than Stanford on Wednesday night, outblocks them 9-4, I believe. And really, when you put up a 400 clip in 2 of the 3 sets against a team as good as Stanford, speaks really highly of the job your setter was able to do. And Lincoln, I don't know if you have any specific comments you want to make about Bergen Riley, but I thought this was one of her best matches of the year.
Both I thought against Stanford and Louisville, it's not only her setting, but she's aggressive, and she had 4 kills in both of those matches too. So I think you're seeing just that aggression step up too. And when
she's starting to go over on 2 a little bit more.
Yeah, when she's aggressive as attacking, I think it opens up more possibilities for her pin hitters, because the block has to stay just a little bit longer on her. And I think Bergen is also just a great setter. She keeps her body very neutral whenever she's doing the jack back to Beeson, or just the distribution is really great. I mean, there's only not a few times that she has the wrong set, but I think she's really elevated her game and started to connect with her hitters a lot better. The one
what
thing,
I did not realize, go ahead.
What I was going to say, the one thing that's missing is from this week was just, it was a weird, Rebecca Alec was MIA on the offense. And I don't know if we could talk about this later or now, but she only had, what was it? Against Stanford, she had 3 kills or 2 kills on 5 swings, and then against Louisville,
she only had 3 swings against Louisville.
3 swings, and the 1 kill was on an overpass. So it wasn't like she got a kill on a set; it was an overpass that she got.
Well,
it's just, I don't know, for all the action that Jackson's getting, Alec is not.
Well, let's talk about that a little more in rotation 2 with Louisville, because there was, if you watch the TV broadcast, the mic'd up segment in Louisville's huddle caught a really interesting comment, I think, from former Nebraska assistant and current Louisville assistant Dan Meskey about Rebecca Alec and Nebraska's use of her, that I wanted to drop into rotation 2. What I didn't realize, and happy to move on after this, I can't believe this stat is correct. This is Nebraska's first ever win against Stanford in Lincoln. Nebraska has lost a couple times to Stanford in Lincoln. They beat them in Omaha. They beat them in Palo Alto. They beat them in other places where the Final Four has been held. But the first time Nebraska's ever beaten Stanford in Lincoln, is that right? I meant to text you after this, because you're the guy with the media guide.
Yeah, I know.
I don't remember.
I know it's the first one in Devaney for sure, because they haven't beaten Stanford since 2008. So, unfortunately, the media guide doesn't have home and away.
Devaney, 2013. And I don't believe Stanford was really making a habit of coming to the Coliseum before that. So let's just pretend that's true. And if anybody wants to get at us in the mentions or email us at volleyballstate@gmail.com, go ahead and do that. But I'm pretty sure that is true. The first Nebraska-Stanford match I ever remember being at was the national title match in the 2006 Final Four, and that was in Omaha. I know Stanford came into Devaney back in 2014 or so, and beat them pretty good. Stanford might have actually won the last couple in Lincoln, but Nebraska finally gets that monkey off their back, their first ever home win against Stanford.
Yeah.
So let's move on to rotation 2. Nebraska is its second top 5 win of the week on Sunday afternoon, or started on Sunday morning here in the Central Time Zone. Another impressive sweep. Nebraska takes this one 2016, 17, 20 at the KFC Yum Center. Nebraska is now 2-0 in the sight of this year's Final Four, hoping to make it 4-0 and earn a chance to come back later on in the year. But Lincoln, I was able to luckily go back and rewatch this a little bit in the early afternoon. We had some family over for a kid's birthday party, and I had one eye on that and one eye on keeping the children in line. But Nebraska just, again, never really seemed threatened except for about midway through game 3. Your overall impressions of this match?
I think that, this goes back to what we talked about with Bergen and Riley, is that this is a team offensive effort too. I think nobody had double-digit kills against Stanford, and Harper Murray led the charge against Louisville with 11, and she got a couple kills late to kind of put her into double figures too. But
she had the last 2 of the match.
Yeah, it's a team effort. Opponents don't know where the ball is coming from, and kind of it was just an impressive offensive showing that Nebraska isn't reliant on one player to take over a match, but they can have people take over stretches.
Yeah, and Nebraska hits 305 in this match, which is really good against any opponent, and especially a top 5 one. I thought it was a sneaky good offensive match because there were stretches when I was watching it, and the rallies were long. And Nebraska's pins were not putting the ball away. I think Louisville has actually really great floor defenders. Elena Scott is one of the best liberos in the country. And there was a point in the match, ABC, I thought, did a pretty good job on the broadcast. This is the first ever regular season volleyball match broadcast on ABC. And they had the coaches mic'd up in the huddle. And midway through game 3, where Louisville had, their first real threat of the match, John Cook was talking to the team, and he said, we're out here hitting the ball at their libero, and they're over there trying to break our fingers. So, what do you say we go out and try to break some fingers and hit the ball a little bit more aggressively against the block instead of funneling things to Elena Scott, who is an absolutely excellent libero for Louisville. But yeah, you're right. Mira Beeson had 9 kills. Harper Murray had 11. Nebraska kind of came on late. And once again, Andy Jackson, no hitting errors, 6 kills, 11 swings, hit 545. So, not a bad week for Andy Jackson. Hit 577 across 2 matches against top 5 teams.
Just your average week. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
But I think that the other part about this too is that this was a classic Nebraska volleyball match too. They relied on their serve. Their serve was phenomenal. I got to sit on the end line. So as much as
I saw you on TV a couple times.
As bad as it is for television watching, it's great to watch the serves and just kind of how Nebraska's attacking the serves, how much movement there is left to right. And their serving really, again, put Louisville out of system, made them uncomfortable. And I thought the story of the match too was Louisville had 25 hitting errors. There's an entire set's worth of points, and Nebraska had 9 blocks, but that means 16 unforced errors that Louisville had, and just giving points. They missed 7 serves as well too, so that's just 23 points right there that Nebraska didn't have to do much. And a lot of those balls that were out by a mile. Danny Busman-Kelly said this in the press game, that they were just, I don't know, is it out of system, or they're forcing it, or just trying to get something through the Nebraska defense. They couldn't.
Well, I wrote down in our show notes that Nebraska won this match by playing Nebraska ball. Nebraska loves to give you just enough rope to hang yourself because they feel like if they keep points alive that you're eventually going to make a mistake. Louisville actually had 3 more kills in this match than Nebraska, which is very weird in a match where you get swept by your opponent. But a lot of times what that is you're trying to hit the ball around. You're trying to hit too perfect a shot. You're trying to hit the ball around a block. Now, Anna DeBeer, Louisville's outside hitter, gets to, swings a lot with no fear. And I thought she was pretty good in this match. She actually hit 308 in it, but she got no help. Louisville's middles, PK, and I don't even know the name of Louisville's second middle, were kind of non-existent. Yes. They were not really factors in the match. Louisville runs a 6-2, and so both their setters, neither one of them really impressed me all that much. They were setting the ball low. They were trap setting their hitters, and Nebraska outblocked Louisville 9-4. And from the service line, the story was Lindsey Krause. Krause had 4 of Nebraska's 7 aces. I believe she had 3 in a row.
3 in a row in the second set
in game 2. So let's just go through the game by game real quick. Nebraska blew Louisville away in the first 2 sets. Krause served 7 straight points in game 1. Nebraska was up 16-8, and basically that first set was over. Game 2, Krause had 3 aces in a 6-0 run after Nebraska had fallen behind 2-0. All of a sudden they're up 6-2. Louisville sides out, and then it's Lexi Rodriguez's turn to serve, and she serves 6 straight points to make it 12-3.
If you're Louisville, you're playing at in front of your big arena, in front of a giant home crowd, national TV audience, and the first 2 sets are over before the media timeout. It has to be really disheartening. And you could just see Danny Busboom Kelly on the sideline was very frustrated, and she didn't have a lot of answers she could give her team.
No, and that was the impressive part against Nebraska. Again, you wonder how they're going to come out, and they came out in charge. I mean, I think a lot of it, again, goes back to the serving, too. You talked a lot about what Lindsay Krause was, and she wasn't the only one. Merritt Beeson was serving well. Lexi Rodriguez was serving well, too. So Nebraska rose to the occasion again, and really that kind of set the tone, too. And they didn't try to do too much. I mean, in the first set, Nebraska only had 9 kills. And they had 2 hitting errors in the entire first 2 sets, one in the first, one in the second. So they're taking what Louisville is giving to them and really aggressive with their defense, and really kind of set the tone that way. So I mean, there was a sizable amount of Nebraska fans here too. I know there was a couple sitting behind me that made themselves known too. So it's hard to tell when it's red on red, but it was again a good crowd for Sunday.
The athletic department made this one of the trips that they take kind of the big donors on, and flew them down to Louisville. And they were posting about that on social media last night. And I recognized some of the folks in the crowd shots there whenever they'd go tight on the Nebraska crowd were some faces that have been around the athletic department for a long time. So yeah, there was a decent crowd of Nebraska fans there. And what they got to see in game 3 was, again, Louisville kind of shooting itself in the foot with some errors. This was the set where Louisville looked like they might flip the momentum. It was tied 16-16, and that's where I believe there was a timeout at 16-16 or right around there.
Nebraska called timeout 16-all, yeah.
Right, Nebraska calls timeout, and they go over to the Louisville huddle, and the Louisville coaches are talking. They're like, basically, we've just got to get out of this rotation, because when we go into the next rotation, Andy Jackson comes out and Rebecca Alec comes into the front row. And what Dan Meskey said was number 5 has kind of become a ghost, like implying they don't set her anymore, or at least weren't in that match, because, she only got set a couple times. But then Louisville really couldn't make Nebraska pay when that rotation switched, because Louisville committed 3 straight errors out of that timeout, and Louisville burned both of their timeouts. And before you know it, Nebraska's up 20-16. Some bad looking play from Louisville in those rallies. You had Charity Looper, who we talked about being a big threat from Louisville on last week's show, got pulled tight to the net from a set, basically ended up on Nebraska's side of the net. Mm-hmm. It was scary when you watch the replay, because she came down right on top of Lindsay Krause's foot. And that's the last thing Lindsay Krause needs, is another, footsie play under the net, potentially injuring her. Luckily, her foot was on the bottom, which means she's not hurt in an ankle. But, it's 20-16 at that point, and it was just side out volleyball from there. Harper Murray had a couple kills late in that one, including one on match point to end it. And all of a sudden, bing, bam, boom, Nebraska has its second top 5 sweep of the week, this one on the road.
Yeah, and that was the key part, that it is tense, and Louisville is kind of getting into the crowd was getting into it a little bit, because they went on a 4-1 run before that prompted that Nebraska timeout. But they come out, and it was kind of a scramble play, and PK Kong, the Louisville middle blocker, tried to set the ball over. Nebraska was kind of sucked up to the net, so she tried to go over them, but a middle blocker trying that, she got called for the rare double hit violation, which isn't legal if you do it now on your side, but because she sent it over, she got called. And then she, on the next play too, she just kind of whiffed on an attack that went right in the net. Timeout Louisville, and then the Looper error, and then a Merritt Beeson kill, another timeout Louisville. Mm-hmm. So it was really, and that was the thing too, that the thing that impressed me, we haven't talked much about her, but we've talked about her a lot in the last couple of weeks, is Merritt Beeson is swinging hard. And I think all of Nebraska was really aggressive and swinging hard too, but none more so than Merritt Beeson. And she's gotten away from kind of the tips and the kind of the soft roll shots over. You felt good for Nebraska when the ball was going to Beeson on that right pin, that she would find an angle and put it down.
Well, the bravest swing of the afternoon that I could think of against Louisville, and I don't remember what point it was exactly, but it was late in game 3 where Louisville serves Harper Murray, and she shanks the pass all the way over across the court. And I think it was Beeson who had to bump set it, and she sends a bump set all the way back across to Murray, who's like 6 feet off the net, and she just crushes this ball cross court and gets the kill. And I'm like, well, that's one way to add another kill to your stat sheet.
Yeah.
Harper Murray swung really brave in that moment. And, Lindsay Krause, I think, isn't getting cheated either, even when she's not putting balls away. She's not getting cheated on her swing. So yeah, Nebraska does seem like a team that's really confident offensively now.
So we kind of glossed it over there. We talked about it before, and you mentioned the Meskey comment too. I mean, what do you think is wrong with Rebecca Alec? Is she just not connecting with Bergen Riley, or is just everyone else is hitting so well that they don't need to use her?
Well, I don't have her last 5 or so matches in front of me. I would be interested to see how many sets she's getting, because like if one of those kills was an overpass, and so that was one swing, that means she only got set twice. It's hard to have a great night when you're only getting set twice. I think, she had a really solid start to the year offensively. She had a great opening match against Kentucky, but she is the middle that's more likely to commit an error. Rebecca Alec has a tendency to yank balls wide and out of bounds instead of just going straight down. I don't know if it's, a connection problem between her and Bergen Riley, or I would need to kind of envision who she is, because she's in the front row when in the 6-2 rotations, I believe, right? Because she's not hitting slides. So Riley's in the back row, she's in the front row. That means that you have an outside hitter and an opposite in the front row with you, and you're just going to get less swings at that point. I think, the role that they have carved out for her is Alex kind of the defensive middle and Jackson sort of the offensive middle.
And she's in the front row between Harper Murray and Merritt Beeson, because that's Lindsay Krause and Merritt Beeson, because Lexi Rodriguez serves for her, so that's the serving order. It always goes Krause, Rodriguez, Beeson. So she's always in the row with 3 attackers. So maybe that kind of limits her option. And you also have Harper Murray in the back row, and she's one of the better back row attackers. And I don't know, I feel like she may get kind of lost, be the fourth option at times. I mean, she's hitting 369 for the season. She did have a couple higher. I mean, she had 6 errors against TCU, 4 errors, but 9 kills against Creighton. But yeah, and really this is just this week where she's had 8 total attacks against Stanford and Louisville combined. Hopefully it just, maybe they're taken away, but when things are humming like they are, if we're complaining about Rebecca Alec not being set enough,
they're not set. They didn't, to my memory, Nebraska did not set the middle in transition a lot today. A lot of things went to the outside, but if you look at sort of the swing distribution, Murray had 31, Beeson and Krause both were right around the same 22 and 21, and then Andy Jackson, who's hitting over 500 this week. You could justify her getting a lot more swings than she's getting. She only had 11 swings in this match. Nebraska's sweeping opponents, so they're only playing 3 sets. I really and they're getting a lot of blocks. And Louisville, we said that Nebraska only had, 33 kills in the match or 36 kills in the match. They had 3 fewer than Louisville. Yeah, as the lights go out in Louisville on Lincoln Arneal. But, I think Nebraska has a lot, they're spoiled for choice. And Bergen Riley gets to, send the ball all over the court to some really talented attackers. And they're going to need Rebecca Alec's offense in some match this year as we get ready to start the gauntlet of Big Ten play. If you're nitpicking at that, like you said, Lincoln, you got to be sitting pretty good. The other thing I wanted to touch on tonight is I thought both liberos had really good matches in the Nebraska-Louisville. Nebraska this week, in playing Stanford's Ogilvie and Louisville's Elena Scott, played 2 of the best liberos in the country. And Lexi Rodriguez really kind of held her own. She had a couple shots, I thought, early in the Louisville match that went through her hands that I was surprised she wasn't able to dig. Only finished with 8 digs in the match, but her strength really is in serve receive, and she got Nebraska in system really well. Elena Scott, want to make mention of her. She had 19 digs for Louisville. Nebraska. That's kind of seems to be their offensive strategy, is they will hit the balls at the liberos a lot. And when you're playing a really good libero, that's risky. But, Nebraska hits over 300 for the match, so not a lot of complaints.
Yeah. 19 of 46 digs, so she was picking up a lot. She also had 16 serve receptions, too, as well. They went after Anna DeBeer a lot in serve receive. She had 26, but Elena Scott was everywhere. There's a lot of times where just Nebraska would try to go over the block, and Atlanta Scouts picking up. So I'm glad we got our Justice for Liberos moment mentioned in there. So you enjoy the Liberos. This was a great week to watch Nebraska volleyball. But let's move on to rotation 3. Well, it was a great week for Nebraska with 2 wins over top 5 opponents. Creighton also had a great week for them. They picked up two wins over top 10 teams. Kind of, it finally felt good for Creighton because they finally broke through. They came really close against Nebraska, really close against Louisville, losing both of those in 5 sets. But they looked dominant when they played both Purdue and Kansas.
Yeah, absolutely. They beat Purdue in 4 sets, and this is at whatever the Jayhawk Invitational at that small gym down in Kansas. Nora Sis had one heck of a week. She had 15 kills in the 4-set win over Purdue. We talk about set distribution. Kendra Waite's doing such a great job running that Creighton offense. 4 J's were in double figures. And this is kind of what you do against Purdue is you have to weather whatever Eva Hudson and Chloe Chacoin are going to get on the outside at Purdue and then see if you can put together enough kills to overcome it. Creighton did because Chacoin and Hudson had 33 combined kills. Purdue actually looked like they were going to send this to a 5th set. They had 2 set points. I think it was 24-22 Purdue in game 4, but then Creighton went on a run, won 5 of the last 6 points of the match, and then they block Eva Hudson on match point to end it. That's a huge win for Creighton and for their RPI and for their tournament seeding, and they carried that momentum over on Saturday against Kansas.
Yeah, and this, I don't know if it's more impressive, but they won on Kansas as 4-2, and really it was Kansas's first loss of the year. They also beat Purdue on this weekend. They played them on, was it Thursday they played them? Or I think it was
Thursday or Friday.
But they look good. I mean, Creighton,
they killed Kansas. They dominated.
Hit 426. Nora Sis did not have any hitting errors. She had 16 kills for a 516 hitting percentage too. I mean, they were efficient. They were clean. And if Creighton is playing at this level, they can. I mean, they'll clean up in the Big East regardless. But this is the type of team that they can make a deep run to the Elite Eight, possibly Final Four.
Absolutely. I was trying to do the math without looking up their schedule, but like Creighton's going to win the Big East. And let's say, maybe they won't, this is conservative, but let's say they drop 2 matches in Big East play. I would take the under on that, but let's just say they go like 18-2 in the Big East. They're 9-2 going into conference play with both of their losses coming in 5 sets on the road to top 5 teams. And if they go like 18-2 in conference, that's 27-4 in the regular season with a pair of top 10 wins. And, that's a 2 seed, maybe, at worst. And depending on what happens, if Texas and Penn State and Nebraska all kind of beat each other up, like Creighton could be right there for a chance to at a number 1 seed. I don't know if their RPI will be high enough for it, but like they've done what they can do. They don't have the Nebraska win or the on the road at Louisville win, but they went 5 with both of them and looked every bit like they belong. And so a great weekend for Kirsten Bernthal Booth's crew. They're going to go into Big East play riding high at 9-2, and they're going to be a top 10 team when the poll comes out on Monday. If I were to guess,
well, there you were.
Oh, they were number 9. They're going to move up. So what are they going to be? 7 maybe.
I may have put them at number 6 in my weekly ranking. So I think that they're that. I mean, you mentioned if they lose 2 matches, if they keep their Big East clean, they could be like I said, they could be a number 1 at the worst, a number 2 seed. So it's good non-conference for Creighton.
Where do we think Nebraska is going to be in the poll on Monday? They came into the week at 6, but they beat number 5. They beat number 2.
They were 5. They were 5 because Stanford in the 2 loss, Penn State lost at number 3, and then Louisville lost number 4. They're going to be number 2 behind Pitt.
Okay, that's what I thought. But I'm glad. I feel better thinking that you also think that.
Yeah.
Some of the other. Yeah, go ahead. You want to add something else?
I was going to say, I mean, speaking of Nora Sis having a great, who also had a great week? Sarah Franklin. She put up 33 kills in 4 sets against Marquette. So hit 517. And this was also impressive too because they
set, if I'm doing my fractions correctly.
Oh, that's some great math. But what's also impressive about this is they did this with their backup setter, Carly Anderson. Charlie Furbringer was out with a boot. She played later in the week too, but was out of this match, and the Badgers didn't miss. I mean, you feed Sarah Franklin, she's gonna get a lot of work done too. So it's also they're kind of I don't know if it's an annual, but with their big home match, they played in front of 15,000 people at the Kohl Center. So just a good night for volleyball, and kind of those 15,000 fans were treated to the Sarah Franklin show, which is fun to watch.
I think I put this down when we were looking at the best wins of the year. This might be Wisconsin's best win so far this year. I think
I did. Yeah,
that's a pretty good Marquette team.
We'll come back to that. We'll put a pin in that. We'll talk about that later.
But 33 kills for Sarah Franklin. Maybe maybe it's between Franklin and Nora Sis for National Player of the Week, because those are some crazy numbers. Who else has put crazy numbers is the number 1 ranked Pittsburgh Panthers. They swept Penn State and made it look easy. They hit they hit 400. No, they didn't hit 400. They hit over 300 in this match. They swept Pittsburgh at Pitt. They've won 27 sets in a row. That's all 9 of their wins this year, right? Have come by sweep. They haven't dropped a set all year. So huge win for number 1 Pitt, who's going to remain number 1 in this week's poll.
And people are going nuts over that. Yes, congratulations. They've won every game by a sweep too, but let's not be ready to start crowning them the greatest team of all time. 2008, Penn State would like a word, who won, I believe, 111 sets in a row. They only lost 2 sets all year, and that was in the national semifinal to Nebraska in front of a rabid crowd at the CHI Health
Well, I don't think anyone's getting ready to say that 2024 Pitt is 2008 Penn State. I mean, they've still got to play longtime conference rival Stanford in the ACC schedule. Longtime ACC rival Louisville, who's going to have something to say about that. But Olivia Babcock, just a sophomore, maybe the early front runner for National Player of the Year if Sarah Franklin isn't going to repeat on this one. She's incredible, and Pitt's just rocking and rolling.
The other people having a great statistical performance, but the up and down award of the week goes to Tennessee. This was a weird week that they had. Tennessee started off on Monday afternoon. This was like at 3:00 maybe. I was at work just putting on some background noise. Oh, volleyball's on. I'll watch Tennessee. Tennessee lost in 5 sets to Wofford College, who entered the match at 5-4. And I was watching the first 2 sets. Wofford dominated them and looked like the better team. Tennessee kind of woke up and won the next 2 to force a 5th. And that 5th set is a coin flip, and Tennessee lost. So it was a weird week for them. But then they come back and they play Western Michigan on Thursday. And I apologize, Nina Kajic, she went off for 42 kills on 76 swings and just 4 errors. So that was another 4-set match too.
Yeah,
so
that's
42
500.
kills. Yeah,
that's crazy.
42 kills in 4 sets is just ridiculous. Had it gone 5, she could have got 50. But what a week for Tennessee to lose to Wofford and then watch a 42 kill performance. Weird times.
Tennessee's been a little up and down. Didn't they get they lost to Penn State? Maybe they're playing some tough teams, and it's rough for them to drop a match to Wofford. Texas looks like they might be getting their feet under them a little bit too. They swept Baylor, who is a top 20 team. Texas has to figure out their setting combination. They're playing around with a 6-2, or they're I'm not sure what Jarrett, what he has seen in practice or coming into the season that made him think he wanted to mess with what won him a national title last year. But Texas has got to get the setting thing figured out. And then it looks like Jenna Wennis maybe riding some pine a little bit. I don't know if she's dealing with an injury or they're just taking her out and trying some different things, but she's been not playing in all of the sets against Texas's competition.
Yeah, it's just so weird to figure out what's going on. But they got so many options that you never know what's going to happen. So the other match, we kind of mentioned this already before, but Kansas beat Purdue. London Davis is kind of the engine for Kansas offense. She had 22 kills, hit 513. So another good win for Kansas. Also kind of needed that validation that they were undefeated, and to beat Purdue really kind of was their first big win of the year for Kansas. So they're hanging around kind of 10th and the end of the week, 10th in the ABCA coaches poll. So keep an eye on them. But that's kind of a quick recap, and we don't go in depth as we do some other weeks. But let's go rotation 4 with Ben Boldt, who head coach at Concordia. Concordia beat Hastings College on Saturday. They got a tough week up ahead. They got another midweek match, and then they host number 1 Northwestern College from Iowa, not Northwestern University for our Chicago area friends, but Northwestern College and
Orange City, Iowa.
Orange City, Iowa. There you go.
Alma mater of one Jack Mitchell.
There you go. Wow. Jack, what a illustrious products that they put out. So let's go to our interview with Ben Boldt in rotation 4. All right, we welcome on Coach Ben Boldt from Concordia University. Concordia is number 4 in the NAIA poll that was released on September 18th. The Bulldogs are 10-1, 3-0 as we record this in the GPAC. They've had a tough road here to start. They got a 5-set win over the 2023 national champion Indiana Wesleyan. Also ranked wins over Viterbo. What did we decide? Viterbo. There we go. Viterbo, Columbia College, and Midland. All 4 teams are part of that 8-team final tournament bracket. So they're doing good things out over in Seward. So, Ben, congratulations on the season so far, and thanks for joining us.
I mean, this is a podcast for Volleyball State, right? I should put a plug in for the coach for Indiana Wesleyan. She's a Nebraska native.
Yes.
She graduated from Norris just like I did, so it's a fun little thing that we got going.
Well, Indiana Wesleyan, didn't they go undefeated last year? They must have had a pretty long winning streak that you all snapped. Do you know how long that was?
I think they were 38-0 last year. I guess I hadn't thought about that.
Lincoln's raising his hand. He might have an answer.
I looked up. They had lost the weekend prior to that. I was wondering that in my research, but they were a juggernaut last year for sure. I remember I saw her at the AVCA gathering down in Tampa. I'm like, oh, I recognize her, and said, hey, hello, go Titans, and I think she hopefully understood that. So.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, you mentioned you beat them earlier this season. I kind of listed the other teams that you played. They were all part of that. The success you've had last year, I mean, did you intentionally kind of want to go out and play some really tough teams to start the year?
Yeah, 100%. I think that when you put that kind of schedule together, I think it really tells everybody in the league, in the conference, in the nation, that it tells you where you're at and what you can expect and really prepare you for conference play. The GPAC is a really tough conference in the NAIA. We call it the Big Ten of the NAIA. And it's a lot of top 25 teams. A couple of years ago, there were 5 of us in the Elite 8. So, I mean, it's competitive. And, you really only get that if you schedule tough. So I think our team expects that.
Did you feel good about the roster you had coming back from last year's GPAC championship team that, made it a little easier to stomach to know that you were going to play some really tough competition at the start of the year?
I mean, honestly, not really. We're a lot different team than we were last year. But I had a lot of trust in the players that we had coming back. So yeah, we were different than we were last year. We ran a 5-1 and kind of had a team that was a veteran team last year, and we've got. I'm not going to say that we're young this year. We got a lot of juniors and seniors, but a lot of different players out there on the floor for us. So we're running a 6-2, and it's a different team that we have. So I expected that we could be competitive.
Yeah, it's a lot of local Nebraska. You got a few from Sioux Falls, a couple from Iowa, Minnesota in there too. But Ella Waters from Hickman, another Norris grad, she's leading the team, 3.08 kills, and then hitting 313. And Ashley Keck from Kearney, also averaging more than 3 kills per set for the Bulldogs. So I mean, a lot of local talent. I mean, what you say you have 31 players on your roster too. I mean, how do you manage all those bodies? I know you got a JV team too, but like that's just a lot of people in a gym at one time.
Yeah, no, it is, and that's probably been one of the bigger challenges. It just in our career, the roster size is different than other places that we've been. It's awesome in the GPAC. Everybody has a JV team, so we have a full schedule for our JV. We talk to our players a lot. A lot of people on our team develop in JV before they compete for varsity. And so it's awesome because a lot of those players, if you're not competing on the varsity team, they still have an opportunity to play. So, I honestly, I think of us as one team. When we do things, we all do it together. When we lift, we do it together. When we practice, we do it together. So it's a lot. And honestly, when I think about practice, I'm thinking a lot about how do we get 31 players to move all together and get quality training in at the same time. So we did a coaches clinic out in Kearney this last semester, last spring, and the Huskers were out there practicing. Mm-hmm. And I'm talking to high school coaches out there after the Huskers play. And so they've got 12 players and like 8 coaches out there. And all of us high school programs, we've got 20 players, 25 players, and 3 coaches, that we're working with. So
different ratios.
How do you take the Huskers practice and put it into what all of us are dealing with and still kind of have the same quality and still have the same foundation? And, that's a lot of what my mind goes towards when we practice, for sure.
Is there a lot of kind of going back and forth, or is it your varsity team and the JV team, or are there players that bounce back and forth too, depending on how they're performing, injuries, and things like that?
Yeah, I'd say within a year, and a year in itself, most of the varsity, we have a varsity training team and a varsity and a JV training team. So you can kind of switch between those. If you're not playing all the time on varsity, you might play in a JV match, but still train with varsity. Same thing the other way. If you are on JV training, you'll train with the JV, but you could suit up for varsity. And if we need you, we'll put you out there. So there is some swing between the two. For the most part, though, the main rotation of varsity players are out there, and there's 2 teams that kind of happen there. So a little bit of play in that. So it's definitely not set.
Are there sub limits at the NAIA level?
Yeah, no, that's a great question. There are unlimited subs. So when we think about running a 6-2, we don't have any worry about running out towards the end and having Doughboy be the middle blocker, in the late part of the set. So honestly, I know that Coach Cook has talked about wanting to limit the subs even more to be like international, but I got to be honest, I've coached in the D1. I've coached kind of all over. I love the unlimited sub. I just think that it allows opportunity for a lot of players to get out there, and it's just I think it makes an exciting game happen. Mm-hmm. So that's my fun.
It seems like at the NAIA level, most rosters are somewhat locally based. Now, for our listeners who aren't aware of where Concordia is, it's in Seward, Nebraska, which is just up the road about 20 miles from Lincoln. You're about an hour from Omaha, not that far from Grand Island, Kearney, Norfolk, all of whom have produced a lot of good high school talent. Do you feel like you're in a pretty sweet spot when it comes to recruiting at your program's level where you're located?
100%. I think that we have a good gateway to central Nebraska. I mean, we're right off I-80, so it's pretty easy for central Nebraska, western Nebraska to get here. And then again, we're right off I-80, so coming from Omaha and that area and Lincoln, we're in a pretty awesome location. And honestly, just for Angie and I coach with Angie. She's my wife, and we've kind of done this thing together for a long time. We met at Nebraska. But and we've never thought that we would be in this location, in our D1 career, Alabama, Iowa, Arkansas, 4 hours away was close to home, but now we're right in the middle of it. So it's been really cool.
Sure. When you're recruiting these athletes, I mean, when you're looking at them, what to you makes them a good NAIA player? Are you just I mean, sometimes you're going up against bigger schools. Sometimes they may win out. But what are you targeting as far as what would make a good NAIA volleyball player?
I mean, we want the best players possible that we can get. I think that we tell the story a lot. We've some of our best players are D1 recruits, where they didn't necessarily feel the connection at that D1 school that they were going to. So, I'll take, for instance, Gabby Nordiker is a player for us. She had a opportunity to play at North Dakota State, and she was. She just didn't necessarily feel the connection there, and kind of came to us later in the process after she had gone through her recruiting and was like, "Hey, would you still be interested in me?" And we're like, "Yeah, 100%. I think that we could do a lot of really good stuff. I think that we can chase championships here." So, that mid-major D1 player, that D2 player, that could be really good. Those are people who play big roles for us. And then, gosh, the volleyball is just so good here in Nebraska that the players that are all Americans for us, all the way down to our JV team, like we've got a good JV team. So the environment here is it's great. It's a great opportunity for people to play, and I feel like the players that we have are similar to how I grew up in volleyball. I grew up going to Husker games and all that stuff, and dreaming of of making that big team happen, and we just love the game. So really that's really what we look for.
We're joined by Concordia University coach Ben Boldt on Volleyball State. The Bulldogs, number 4 this week in the country in the NAIA poll. They're 10-1 on the season, and tied for first in the GPAC, the Great Plains Athletic Conference last year. Had a great year last year, Ben. You beat Midland University a couple times down in Fremont, but then unfortunately had that season-ending loss to them in the NAIA postseason. Was that a pretty tough pill to swallow, getting knocked off by a team that you'd had a couple of wins against in the regular season?
It's a great question, Jeff. I appreciate you bringing that up.
I can see the tortured look on your face. You're like, you son of a.
Yeah, coaching, playing volleyball, nothing's guaranteed, right? The game does not remember what happened in the past, so you've got to be able to show up and be your best. But honestly, we're not going to measure who we are as people based on whether or not we win a volleyball match. So we 100% love our team. We 100% trust our team that everybody is given their best effort. And yeah, that's tough when you lose the match. I've been coaching for a while now, and that last match of the year, it's tough to win. And if you base your yourself off of whether or not you win that match, it's gonna be kind of up and down as you go. Now we hope, and it's a big thing for Angie and I to stay process oriented. Now we hope that we continue to get better every single year and take the things that happen and learn from them. So our motto this year, as we go through the season, is grit. We're talking a lot about, it's 2024, so we're talking about Kobe Bryant. He wore number 24, so this is our Kobe year this year, and so we've done some Mamba mentality workshops. And Kobe has a quote out there in a video that he says, I never really felt like I lost a game. I just kept learning through that process, and so that's what we try to do.
Yeah, you mentioned, you did face Midland. It was in your pool play at Nationals too, but you kind of mentioned already that it's not unusual. And there's a lot of GPAC teams that make it, or local teams. Midland made it, Bellevue University's common, and then Northwestern. I think they're ranked number 1 right now, and they're coming to. They'll be. They'll come into Seward this upcoming weekend for a big showdown. It's homecoming. Are you building up this match? Is there? Do you think there'll be buzz around number 1 team coming to your turf?
Yeah, I mean, I hope so. I mean, people will be looking forward to it for sure. It'll be, I think it'll be a good match. We played them twice last year. Got beat in the GPAC championship tournament up in Orange City up there in 5 sets. That was a fun game to be a part of. And we had one of our players go down. So we ran a 5-1 last year, and the player that got hurt, she was running a slide and she landed on a pole and tore ACL in that moment. So it kind of turned us into a different team a little bit. It had a great backup come in. Sarah Huss, she was a big 6'4" girl, but she didn't go as behind the setter as well. So we kind of stayed in front a little bit, but now we're a different team this year. So we're running a 6-2, and we've got 2 setters and 2 big right side blockers. So we're hoping that we can match up a little bit better against Northwestern. They've got 2 great outsides, and I mean their team is really seasoned, and they have pretty much everybody back from last year. So we're looking forward to a big match there.
Ben, when we were trying to synchronize our schedules and find the best time to talk, I know you said you've got some recruits in town on Friday. I imagine it's a big recruiting weekend for you. Tell the listeners a little bit about what sort of a recruiting weekend looks like at Concordia. What do you like to show the recruits off about your campus, about your program, and how is it different from kind of what you saw when you've been on D1 staffs?
Yeah, no, great question. First of all, we like to let them know who we are as coaches and what we believe in. So we've got a coaching philosophy sheet that we go over with our recruits. Same thing that we go over with our team every year. So we're big into core values. We're built on our core values: love, trust, hard work, sacrifice, and try to measure ourselves on that kind of stuff and let the results take care of themselves. So that's a big thing for us. I think that we've got great people here that really care for you and take care of you. So I think that's something that we always like to highlight. I love our facilities here. I think that a lot of people see that and they're like, man, I didn't realize that this is what you have here at Concordia, So, I mean, I'll put our facilities up against a lot of the D1 schools that we've been at. We've been at Alabama, we've been at Iowa, we've been at University of Arkansas. So what we have here, it's awesome. We have to share that. We're a small school, so we have our time and we share that with other sports, but I think that can be an advantage also. You can have a full experience here and not just be all in on your sport and put all of your life into that. You can have a well-rounded experience. So those are some things that we like to highlight. And again, I think that when you come here, you can win championships. I think when you go to a lot of D1 schools, there's 4 or 5 schools that you can really honestly say that, and other than that, you might be just competing for conference championships possibly. So there you go.
Well, you have mentioned a couple of the other earlier stops in your coaching career, D1 programs like Arkansas and Iowa. I know, the first time we met would have been when you were a graduate assistant at Nebraska. And for both of us, that feels like it was a million years ago. But give us a little bit of insight on what were the biggest things that you kind of learned from that program and from working with John as you were a young coach, just sort of figuring out what kind of coach you wanted to be.
Yeah, I mean, I knew that I loved volleyball before I got to Nebraska as a college student. I was actually a ball boy for the Huskers when I was in middle school. So I got to see Coach Cook. It was when he was at Wisconsin. I was a ball boy for that match versus Nebraska. So you have that. So I knew that I loved volleyball before that point. I got in there, but I didn't really learn about what volleyball was until getting at Nebraska. So Coach Cook had a big piece of that on learning how to just piece all the things together. This is what we're trying to do. Craig Skinner was a huge part of what just teaching how to train and teaching, what volleyball was all about, and just having all those conversations and having all the time together there. So I really kind of credit those two guys on just the foundation of what I learned when it came to volleyball. And you pick up stuff from everywhere you go. Judy Green was the head coach at Alabama when we were there, and she's a small. She's like 5'5", but you swear she's 6 foot, 6'5". After you talk to her, she's got a great personality and makes you feel like $1 million. So, all the people that you encounter and meet along the way, they all affect you somehow. But learned a whole lot at Nebraska for sure.
You were there for that 2006 national championship. Do managers get a ring too? Did you get a ring?
Oh yeah, we're part of the team. I mean, I still feel like we were the national championship team. We were undefeated on the B side for that entire year. It was me, Bill Egbert was the other student manager there. That's Gwen Egbert's son. Mm-hmm. And then Rachel Schwartz, Amanda Gates, Maggie was there at the time. She was our setter. So I mean,
Maggie Griffin. Yep. Yeah.
Maggie Griffin. Yeah. We were undefeated on that side of the court. So we earned our ring.
That's good. Good.
Yeah, it was Stanford, UCLA, Nebraska, and Nebraska's B side at the Final Four.
Yeah, that's where it was. Yep.
Well, hey, Ben, thanks so much for being with us today. We've been with Ben Boldt, the head coach of the Concordia Bulldogs, ranked number 4 in the country in the NAIA this week. They got a huge match this weekend, homecoming in Seward. The Bulldogs are taking on number 1 Northwestern of Iowa. Ben, best of luck this week and the rest of this season, and we hope to talk to you again sometime.
Awesome. Appreciate you guys having me on. This is good stuff.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right. Thanks again to Ben Boldt, the Concordia Bulldogs' big win over Hastings College on Saturday. Some big wins for each of the Big Ten. Well, we think they're the top contenders for the Big Ten title. We're going to find out when conference play begins this week. But as we move into rotation 5, it's a little bit of a Big Ten preview, our undefeated watch. We've got 9 teams left who have not yet suffered a loss this season. Lincoln, we're going to start this out by looking at some of the Big Ten contenders and who we think is their best win in the non-conference season. Nebraska, you have your pick, right, between Louisville, Stanford. I guess you could even throw in Kentucky or Creighton if you want. I think the win on Sunday against Louisville is Nebraska's best win of the season, simply because it came on the road against a Final Four contender. Louisville was an Elite 8 team last year. There's always a little bit of a thing, I feel like, when Nebraska plays Louisville because of the Danny Busboom Kelly, Dan Meskey connection. Those two know the Nebraska program, really well. And for Nebraska to just come out and dominate a top 5 team on the road like that, I think is really, really impressive.
Yeah, it was most impressive. I will counter that by saying, I thought Stanford is Nebraska's best win too, because that was kind of the question mark. Yes, it was at home. I think that's maybe a point in your column for the argument, but the way that Nebraska took care of Stanford, and Stanford was coming off a win against Texas a couple days prior to that, and they were hitting, like we mentioned, 313. So I think Stanford is Nebraska's best overall, but I think when you're picking between top 5 wins, it's column A, column B. So
I would have definitely listened to an argument for Creighton being Nebraska's best win of the season as well, with how intense that match was and kind of what I think it means for a lot of those players to play against each other. They're really familiar. The Nebraska kids are really familiar with Creighton, and so to see what Creighton has gone on the road and done this weekend, that's a win that's only going to appreciate as the season goes along. Let's talk Wisconsin. This is another one where we have a little bit of a differing in opinion. I guess I put down in the notes, I was looking for Wisconsin's best win of the year. It wasn't an easy call for me because they started 0-3. They got a 5-set win on the road at Baylor, which is a top 20 team. So, that's maybe my argument for Wisconsin's best win of the season so far.
Yeah, and I think we talked about this earlier. What I said, I put Marquette down too, because I think Marquette's going to be probably second, third in the Big East. So, but I think performance-wise too. I mean, that's the one that it kind of was a trap game, but they had if they would have lost it, they could have had reasons why, because their starting setter was out. But Sarah Franklin rose to the occasion, and Julio Orzo is really kind of rounded in shape too. I know she had a good match this weekend, but I thought Marquette is. I mean, it may not be the most impressive on the resume, but what they were to do given the circumstances, I think that it's the most impressive.
Yep. We were united in some of these next ones. Penn State has had a really impressive start to the year, but sweeping Louisville at home in State College, they hit 358, led by a freshman setter, Izzy Stark. I think that's a really impressive win for Penn State, and probably their best win of the year.
Yeah, and then go to Oregon, also another ranked Big 12 team, Big 10 team. Their best win is a 5-setter against BYU, and that was in Provo too. So BYU's kind of they've hovered around. Yeah, they've kind of hovered around the top 15, top 20. They lost 3 in a row, which is weird. But Oregon looked like. I mean, you kind of wondered how Oregon was going to rebuild with a lot of the pieces coming back, but this was the one match that I thought came together for Oregon, and they looked like a team that deserves to be ranked.
We skipped over Purdue real quick. Purdue always seems to just underwhelm a little bit in the non-conference play. I don't, they want to be a Final Four team. They're going to have to prove it one of these years, but they do have a 4-set win over Kentucky. That's probably Purdue's best win of the year.
Yeah, and Kentucky's they've played a brutal non-conference. They're 7-5, and all of their losses have come to other teams in the top 10. But Purdue was probably hoping to not go 0-2 against ranked teams in Kansas. And they were looking for a chance to really build their resume, but didn't do so. So that's kind of. But they start off with a hard Big Ten schedule. So the other one next up on our list, we have Minnesota. I think this was fairly easy. Minnesota, that first weekend over the Labor Day weekend, they had a 5-setter on Texas that really kind of put them on the map like they could be. But they again have losses to TCU. And they lost to someone else too, but they've had some losses that have.
Oh wait, Minnesota. Sorry,
Minnesota, not Texas. But Minnesota, they have a couple good wins but a couple other losses. But I think to knock off Texas when Texas was, they look good that weekend too. They beat Wisconsin, and Texas looked good, but Minnesota, glad to see Melanie Schaffmaster is healthy again. They look like a lot better offense with McKenna Wooker, and Julia Hansen looks like the real deal at outside hitter.
We could probably go real quick through USC. We're going to talk about the Trojans here in just a bit in rotation 6, but they do have a 4-set win over Kansas State, one of their best wins of the year. Washington, Lincoln, I haven't seen very much of them. I think I've watched one of their matches on Big Ten Network. They're 10-0, but they have not played, a murderer's row schedule, and don't necessarily look to me like a top tier Big Ten team. Anything you notice about the Huskies?
No, I haven't watched much of them, but they have that 5-setter win over Georgia, who started the year ranked, and they've kind of are receiving votes. Washington, I think, is 27th in point total, so they're kind of hanging out on the edges of the rankings, but you keep winning. That's more wins than they had last year. So Washington seems to be turning a corner over second-year coach Leslie Gabriel. So speaking of Washington, I'll say they're 10-0. So we ended the weekend with 9 teams who were undefeated. We lost 2. Kansas and Texas A&M both lost their first matches of the year. So we're down to 7 teams that have not lost. So as we enter conference season, give them some shout outs. So good job for them. I'll just quickly, I think when you see who some of these teams are, some of them have played pretty soft schedules, but Pittsburgh is number 1. They have not played a soft schedule. They've definitely earned their undefeated and are ranked number 1s for that. Arizona in the Big 12, they're undefeated. San Jose State in the Mountain West. South Dakota State up in our neighbors to the north in the Summit League, they're undefeated. And Syracuse again played soft schedule. UConn played a Pillsbury boy soft schedule, and then
what did I read? Did you put this in the Substack this week where UConn was down like 6 match points or something and came back and survived?
In the 4th set, they were down. It was 24-18, I think. They saved 6 straight match points, and they had like a 90 something. It was one of those, basically the inverse of a Nebraska football graphic. But
Right.
sorry, cheap shot.
99% chance of losing the match, but they flipped it and won.
Yeah, and then the last undefeated team, is UConn and then Washington, as we mentioned too. So we're at 4 weeks into the season. We have 7 undefeated teams.
Mm-hmm. Texas A&M and KU were the 2 teams that fell from the ranks of the unbeaten this week. Texas A&M, they lost to Wisconsin, right?
Yes, and also Tennessee Tech. They didn't make my list, but they lost on Friday. They had 2 matches in one day. Tennessee Tech was one of the final.
Perhaps
10.
this year's Citadel that
they were
keeps us looking at them over the next couple of weeks.
Yeah.
Let's move into rotation 6. Nebraska opens Big Ten play this week with the brand new newcomers from the Pac-12. UCLA and USC both come to Lincoln. I would have to think Nebraska would be favored in both of these matches. Just taking a look at what the LA schools have done so far this year. We start with UCLA. And is this a Friday, Saturday, or a Friday, Sunday week?
Friday, Sunday, yeah. They play USC Sunday night at 6:30, so it's going to be a late night. But
that's gonna
mess with our recording schedule. Yeah,
we're gonna record at like 10 p.m.
Why not? But they start with the Lauren Cook Invitational against UCLA on Friday night too.
Mm-hmm. Nebraska plays UCLA. The Bruins are 6-3. They did just sweep Cal on Saturday, but the Bruins 3 losses this year to Tennessee, TCU, and of all schools, UC Davis. They lost to the UC Davis Aggies.
There you go.
Within the last a couple weeks. So UCLA has had an up and down start to the year. It's the second year under head coach Alfie Reft, who was one of the assistants on the U.S. Olympic team this year. Players to watch for UCLA, they're led by junior outside hitter Sheridan Leverett. I hope I'm pronouncing that correctly. She's got about 4 kills a set. She has reached double-digit kills in each of the Bruins matches this year, including a season-high 18 this weekend in their win over Cal. But nobody else really on UCLA's attack scares you all that much. Freshman outside hitter Kiki Horn has 3 kills a set. UCLA, a perfectly cromulent volleyball program, but they're 6-3 this year. And I would have to think that, Nebraska should be able to take care of them on Friday.
Yeah, UCLA does have a win over Georgia Tech, that first match of the year.
That's right.
They're number 14. So that's their best win, is that, or one to start that, but a couple puzzling losses. But on Sunday, Nebraska will take on USC. They're 8-2. They beat UC San Diego on 4 on Saturday night too. Their 2 losses have come. They're ranked losses, so they're not bad losses, but to Creighton and number 1 Pittsburgh. And it's kind of a homecoming. Our old friend Allie Bainhorst is leading the Trojan. She's hitting 3.8 kills per set, and she's leading. Yeah, she's been the main attacker. It's kind of fun to watch her on offense. Really, I mean, she's the go-to player. They had a couple other players, London Waju, and their setter is also Weijie. Thank you, Weijie. Mm-hmm. And they have a really good setter as well too. And this, but it's the offense revolves around Allie Bainhorst. She's attacking front row, back row, wherever. It's fun to see her kind of thrive in this, an offense built around her.
Just like Tennessee kind of is out there dropping sets to schools you don't expect them to. UC San Diego or USC on Saturday night lost their first set, not to San Diego, the Toreros, but to UC San Diego, the Tritons. I want to say that was 32-30 in game 1, and then they came back and won the next 3. But, USC, they have talent, but, they're not out here steamrolling teams, and their offensive numbers aren't super impressive. They're hitting 226 as a team, so they're kind of high error. They are a very good blocking team. However, USC ranks 3rd in the country in blocking. They average over 3 blocks a set. So Nebraska is going to have to be really disciplined in their attacking, and Bergen Riley is going to need to move this ball around. It's going to be a matchup of some really good setters on Sunday evening, because Lincoln, you mentioned USC's got a good setter. Mia Tuaniga is USC's setter. She was on the U.S. Collegiate National Team this summer, and she's really, really good. So this is going to be an entertaining match. I don't know if I would put USC on the level of like Arizona State, who Nebraska had a good tussle with, even though they swept Arizona State. But Nebraska is going to welcome the LA teams into the Devaney Center. They did this a couple of years ago. UCLA came in and played on back-to-back nights. They played UCLA on like Friday and Saturday, and Nebraska swept them both times. So they have a good history of playing the California schools in Lincoln.
Yeah, and that Sunday night match will be on BTN. So stay up late, get your Sunday night popcorn ready to go, and it should be a good show. So we will have complete coverage of that. Jeff and I will probably burn the midnight oil to get the podcast out, but we would do that because we care about you and we want you to have all the volleyball content that you want. So you can be part of our community, help us out, help support us by becoming a sponsor of Volleyball State. If you're interested in getting your business in front of our audience, our vast audience, contact Brianna at hurrdat.com or maybe buy some Volleyball State merch. Wear it to a match next week. We got sweatshirts in there. It's fall is officially here, so get some great Bold Set Spike sweatshirts, Justice for Libero sweatshirts, and support the Volleyball State community and wear that out with pride.
We have not gotten into the cowboy hat game like it seems like everyone else has. I don't know. I don't think that fits our brand, so maybe we will skip that. But if you like your Bold Set Spike t-shirt, you can find all that at hurrdatsports.com/shop. You can also interact with us in the digital space, as so many of you do before, during, and after matches. You can find us on Twitter at volleyballpod. We squatted on that early, and now we own it. You can email us at volleyballstate@gmail.com. You can also sign up for Lincoln's free Volleyball State Substack at volleyballstate.substack.com. Did I get that right? And if that's not enough, you can find us individually on the Twitters and the Instagrams. I'm at @ByJeffSheldon on Twitter. Lincoln, how can they find you?
You can find me at Lincoln_VB. And if you do threads, I'm Lincoln_VB. We had all the social media cornered. Follow us on TikTok. So thanks to Kahm Broham for producing today's show. And thanks to Hurrdat Sports. Follow them to see our shiny faces on YouTube. Follow them on everywhere that you get your social media as well, too. So that's our show for this week. Thanks for living in the Volleyball State.